I see a finger waving at me. I believe that means we're on. So I will wait to see. Oh, now see I see my own face on stream, and I'm waiting for some acknowledgement from chat. They can hear me. Hey, Yavor, how are you? Hello, everyone. Welcome to DevStream number 25. I hope everyone is doing great today. Yep, looks like some people are slowly filtering into chat. I have Alex joining me. Alex, how are you today?
Hi, I'm surviving pretty well. I had some long weekend to refill my batteries a bit in a nice village near the mountains. So life is good.
That's good. Yeah, I know. We just had a major milestone very recently, like very, very recently. So it's been a extremely busy last couple of weeks.
Yeah, indeed. We're working here at least 12 hours a day, some of us. It's quite hard, but it's fun as we're putting up the final touches, so to say. And it's cool when you do something that you enjoy. The work does not tire you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. We are gonna have Georgie come on a little bit later. I know he's in the wings, so it's both of you today, not just the Alex and Brad show. So it'll be fun to have Georgie back and his epic beard. I was actually talking to someone, I think it was a week or so ago. We were talking about like when you get your beard shaved, how people don't recognize you anymore. And there was this conversation about, man, if Georgie shaved his beard, he would look like a completely different person. And then one person on that call was like, Georgie is not allowed to shave his beard until this game ships. Like, I don't care what happens. That beard is like the good luck beard. He can't shave it. Like it's there until the end. So
It's
I
funny.
see Georgie smiling in the corner. I don't know if you know this now, but supposedly your beard is now a critical part of making sure that Knights of Honor is becomes what it's supposed to be.
It's funniest when you have little kids. It actually happened to me when you shave your beard and they cannot recognize you, and they freak out. So it's quite funny.
That's so fun. Yeah, I actually I mean I have a beard most of the time, but I did shave cleanly shave. What was it, like a 5 or 8 months ago or something, just for a day, and then grew it back. And my significant other was like patting my face and calling me baby face. She's like, "What's wrong with you? Like, what's happened to your face?" So yeah, it's a real thing. Um, well, we have a dev diary up, so if you want to read that, it's on our community site, community.knightsofhonor.com. It's dev diary number 25, talking about the royal family. So we're going to be talking through that. I also want to start the stream by kind of, I know that every stream, I was kind of hoping to wait till a few more people roll in, because I know some people come in a little bit late. Maybe I'll save it for the middle of the stream. So we'll talk about this a little bit later, because I know that people jump in. I do want to talk a little bit about the questions we get about the release date and some of the commentary that we're seeing on the forums. Contrary to, I won't say popular belief, but it's a very specific set of people. There are some people that believe that we're not reading the Steam forums and we only read Discord. That is absolutely not true. We read all sorts of stuff, and we're talking about these comments constantly. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to leave it till maybe halfway through the stream. That way everyone can get in and we can repeat ourselves as a few times as possible. So for those that are here and hear me, I will talk about some of the release date feedback maybe at the 30-minute mark. So if you have those questions pop up in chat, just tell everyone wait for 30 minutes and we'll chat about it some then. I think though we'll start the stream talking about royal family, and then we'll kind of segue back into that. How does that sound, Alex?
Yeah, it's cool because if you talk about it now, that in the middle of the stream there will be the same questions. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're talking about royal family. Now we've talked about the royal family, I guess, tangentially throughout all the different streams. So this is like really kind of deep diving on the topic a little bit.
Yeah,
When we say royal family, like what do we mean by that?
so right, you're correct. We've mentioned it many times, but it's just because the king and the royal family matters a lot to the entire game. But we never gotten in the specifics of the royal family, so it's high time to do it. The royal family is the king, the queen, their siblings, and a category that we call important relatives. that specific category has changed several times during the development, and even changed a bit after I wrote this dev diary. So it's something very dynamic, and this is why do we change it so much? Because here we are trying to find the best balance. What do we want the royal family to be for the players, and how deep the mechanics should be. Since we don't want the royal family to be the main focus, as the avatar of the player in Knights of Honor is the kingdom itself. You are not the king, and you are not that dynasty that rules, but you are the entire kingdom, and the dynasty can potentially change. It must be important, of course, as it was for every kingdom during that time. These are monarchies, after all. But we don't want the game to be focused on that. It's not a dynasty simulation, after all.
Yeah, and I think that was we actually early on in the project talked about this some because and I noticed some people in the comments on the community site were mentioning that not all there are differences between Knights of Honor 1, Knights of Honor 2 when it comes to the royal family, but a lot of it's very similar. And we did have some early designs back years ago about like expanding its functionality and adding a lot more dynamic relationships. At one point, we were talking about having dynamic families for the different knights and having like their heritage have a play in a number of like their skill things. And I think we ended up kind of shying away from that because, like you said, it starts kind of heading down that kind of dynasty or lineage simulator, what is not really what the core of Knights of Honor is about. And it was interesting to see kind of the feedback and responses in the forums where I think that's also the way the community feels. Like there are games out there, if that's the kind of game you want to play, there are games out there that serve that role. Knights of Honor really isn't that. You know, it has a little bit of a different flavor to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of the grand strategy part of ruling a kingdom, developing the provinces, and politics, diplomacy. That's the main. We don't want to steal the focus away from that main feature.
Yeah, absolutely. So the royal family really falls into kind of three main groups, right? So I know we talk about this in the dev diary. Now obviously the first group is a king and queen. That should be kind of um uh self-explanatory. I mean, those are the leaders of the kingdom at that point.
Yeah, they matter the most. We'll
Right.
talk about abilities later on. So yeah,
And then under that we have kind of the royal family's children, which I also think is pretty self-explanatory. And that's really kind of the prince and princesses, and basically your current kind of potential heirs, and they have their own kind of tier of importance and things that they can do, like prince being turned into a knight, and again these are all things that we've kind of like laid out before. The politics and kind of the diplomacy part of it, I think is also relatively self-explanatory.
yeah. They have the first the diplomacy part, marriages, which is quite important. Royal marriage is one of the strongest bonds you can have between kingdoms, and a lot of situations can emerge from that royal bond. And also princes can become part of the royal court, so they can be governors, be characters on the map. You can use them whatever class they have, and yeah.
Yeah. But the one part, the third group is the one that I actually, when I read the dev diary the first time, I had to reread this a couple times because I'm like, okay, I get kings and queens, that makes sense, easy to understand. Get prince and princesses, that makes sense, easy to understand. What the heck are important relatives? And I had to like read the dev diary in a couple different ways. As I was prepping my script for today. I'm like, I want to make sure I get this straight because I think it's a concept that makes sense once you understand it. But at the beginning, I was a little bit confused. So there is a third part of the royal family, which we call important people or important relatives. What exactly are important relatives? Like, how does that work?
Well, this is the group that changed probably a
By
hundred
the way, by the
times.
way, I did. Sorry, I'm gonna jump in. I almost was gonna ask you this on streams. I couldn't figure it out when I was reading, and then I'm like, oh no, I get it now. So I did learn it. But
Okay.
it definitely it tripped me up for a second when I was going through the diary. So please go ahead.
Right now, important relatives are actually the siblings of the king, his brothers. Um, uh, just before several weeks, it included also the uncles of the king potentially, and during the development cycle, it was a lot of there were a lot of differences. That's why so far we've named it important relatives, because we're not certain what will be the final state of that
Mm.
category. But pretty much these are characters that are currently not in the direct royal family. They are neither king or queen or prince or princesses. So they have royal blood. They have heritage from a king that at some point perished. And they have several functions. First, you can hire them for free. They can become part of your royal court. And
Okay.
yeah, they don't take any wage. And second, they have some bonuses depending on their class that are additional to the default character role. For example, if they are marshals, they provide additional morale to the entire army of the entire kingdom, and such bonuses from that sort. And third, I know that I said that there are two things, but in cases that there is no direct inheritance, they can become kings, and this is not a dynasty change, so they can inherit the crown, and that's normal inheritance.
Yeah. So, I mean, to lay this out in practical terms, so you have a queen, to your king. They have a number of children, and you have a main heir. When that king dies, the heir inherits the kingdom, but those other siblings, the other brothers and sisters, are still relevant, and they still are relevant to your bloodline. So, say your heir is a marshal and goes off and gets killed in war really early and doesn't have any children. One of your other siblings could take the throne without any real major penalty there. I mean, there's obviously some penalty to losing a king, but it's not the same as not having any royal family available at all. The dynasty and the line can still continue.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly like that. Losing a king is always a problem, a bit of a problem, but losing the entire dynasty could be really epic. I will tell you one story that happened to me 2 days ago,
Oh,
related to dynasty change. But I will just leave it for the end of the stream if we have enough time.
okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's very important to have some kind of heir to the throne, because otherwise the risks are very great.
Sure, makes sense. So, I mean, I think this is it's an I think it's a nice thing when it comes to like actually making sure that you and we're about to talk about this a little bit later, but it's like there is value to getting wed as soon as you can, because the more children that you can produce, in a way, kind of makes your dynasty a lot more robust to those kind of situations taking place, because you have other options aside from just your direct children, when a heir takes the throne.
Yeah, this is actually it's an interesting development story, because we just froze that feature. What How it worked just a few days ago. When you have your princess married, when they inherit the crown, when they become kings, there was a possibility that they already have some children that are already of some age, depending on the age of the new queen and the new king, and thus you can start immediately with some new princess ready, but and princesses, of course. But did we decide to freeze that feature? And we made some changes that also help you having your dynasty continued. Um, we just didn't like the fact that you cannot choose their class and profession, because if you just get those already grown princes, you cannot customize their skills and their class as they are growing, because we don't want too many characters spawning and visible at the same time. That's something that we talked just in the beginning of the stream about the complexity of the dynasty and the royal family. we just want to keep the simple two-layer concept plus the important derivatives, and that's why we currently keep the princess young enough when they inherit the crown, so they have enough time to have heirs and marry if they're not married and so on. But this is one of the things that we've chosen to do. We want to make the better gameplay instead of making the more historical or realistic things for the game, and that's why we did that artificial age stopping for princess. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we talked about this before where the game doesn't have a date for a reason. There are some things that we do that are gameplay oriented to kind of bend that enough to kind of make the game more interesting. And I think that's part of what you're talking about there. A Bad Omen, we are going to talk about the release date topic in about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to talk about it at the before we change over to Georgie in the middle. So I want to give enough time for people to join the stream and maximize the number of people that hear the response. So we'll talk about that in a little bit here. So now taking a step back, there is kind of a new thing that we've added into the mix here that's a little bit different than Knights of Honor 1. And this is really about the king and the queen. I mean, it's all about all the royal families. They all have this. But right now we're calling it abilities, whether we keep it that name or change it, who knows. But they're really they're different than the skills that you get as a royal court member where you're leveling up your character and things like espionage or diplomacy. There are these kind of like baseline talents or abilities of the individuals. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, this is different from Knights of Honor 1. This wasn't there in Knights of Honor 1, I don't believe.
Yeah, it's quite different here. Here's how abilities work. First, skills are focused on the character abilities as a character, as a governor, but not as a ruler of the entire kingdom.
Kind of
While
like traits, really. Like they're
yeah, yeah,
like personality traits.
they are helpful for specific actions and things that the character does, but not for the entire kingdom. And the abilities are always focused on the entire kingdom, and they are always the sum of points that the king and queen have. So yeah, we always need one great one behind each king, because if you choose the proper bride, you can boost your economy, for example, military, diplomacy, espionage, and religion. These are the 5 abilities right now. And
Yeah, so just to make sure you kind of slip that in there in the middle of a thought. So there are 5 different ability ups, and I think we have a couple of screenshots that show them up there. There is warfare, there is economy, there is diplomacy, there is religion, and there is espionage. Not ironically, they do kind of tie in a way to the different royal court classes, but they're completely separate from them.
yeah, you can have, for example, you can have a king that is a spy, but has a very high economy ability, for example, or all kinds of combinations actually can be done. And not all kings are equally good, by the way. The sum of their abilities is not equal. There is some randomness. So
Sure.
these are some dynamics that can make you change the DR. For example, not choose the eldest prince, but some younger, or someone having the abilities that you want for your kingdom.
Yeah, it
And
makes sense. It's part of that. It's part of that strategy element of like how do you want to maximize your king's benefit to your kingdom, because there are some elements there. And I think you were kind of talking about this earlier. It ties into maybe how you decide to marry off your queen, marry off your princes earlier, because so there's something that we've talked about where if your king is unmarried when they take the throne and you leave them unmarried, they do have a chance to marry someone inside your kingdom randomly. You have no control over that.
yeah,
It just pops up and here's your new queen. But if you go out there and find someone that you marry, you can both look for the diplomatic relationship, but you also can maybe hunt for different ability stats, because those abilities can the queen's abilities are combined with the king's abilities when it comes to the benefits once they've risen to the throne. There's
yeah.
some strategy there. You got to think about that a little bit.
Absolutely, there is. You can check out the abilities of each princess and prince that you you're about to marry. So you can just make your pick. Of course, you cannot have any princess that you want, just like in the real life. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But I like this. I think it adds. It's something that I really thought was a neat change because I remember in Knights of Honor One. I mean, you would marry your princes off for diplomatic reasons, but sometimes if you didn't have a diplomatic reason, you would just wait and see what happened because there was no real. I mean, yeah, you could get into a risky situation where you don't have an heir, but it wasn't. The pressure was purely diplomatic and then heir risk. And I like now that there's a little bit of like that strategic decision making. We were like, well, diplomacy is cool too, but I also am gonna get a benefit from this later on down the road. So while I have a chance to control it, maybe I'm looking around for not just any queen or not just queens of of people that I care about, but a queen that's a good queen that can really boost my kingdom by her abilities and talents. And I think that's a it's a small thing. It's not like a big aspect, but it does have that little bit of touch in there. I know there was some questions by I think it was Blake Williams in the channel about in the thread about that, and he was kind of um, critiquing its complexity. And I mean, I think all critiques are fair, but I really personally enjoy it because it does add that extra level of decision making. You're thinking about multiple things. I think when you're thinking about multiple things, that's kind of cool.
yeah, I think that we achieved some state of the kings and queens and overall the royal family that are not actually they're not so complex. You just have five abilities, each of which can have up to 5 stars. So you just it's a simple math, but it gives you interesting choices, and I think that's the best thing about games, having interesting choices without complexity to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to bring Georgie on here, and we will talk release date there in a second. But Alex, we're going to bring you back on for the Q&A section a little bit later. So thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, thank you too. I'll be here.
And now we get Georgie's epic beard.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Glad to be back.
How you doing, Georgie?
Great, great. Yeah, as Alex
Yeah.
mentioned, milestone stuff, so pretty hectic these days, but we survived. That's the important
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beard still growing strong.
Yeah, slow but steady.
I know I thought it was really funny when I was told that I was warned I wasn't even supposed to mention to you the idea of you maybe even potentially taking that beard off. So it's now a staple.
It did take a toll on me. It's a lot of pressure, but I'm gonna try to be resisting my urge to cut it for until we release the game. It's gonna be
Maybe we need like
yeah.
beards of Knights of Honor devs. Like it's almost like the faces of WoW or whatever back in the old days where you go and look up like the different. You can just have like all of we can blur our faces off and just show our beards.
And guess who is that person based on their beard?
Yeah, well, you're an easy one to pick up.
Yeah.
Well, before we go into the questions, I do want to take a second here. We're about the midway point. I did want to take a quick second to kind of talk about the release date topics. I know it comes up a lot, and everyone's been asking about it. So I've answered this before, and I know that some people think it's a non-answer, but I promise you it's not. We really believe very, very firmly in giving games the time they need to become the best versions of themselves at THQ Nordic. I think you've seen that with a number of our products. We think it's important. It does make release date announcing and planning a little bit tricky. And it also makes things tricky when we want to announce a game early and be involved with the community while we're developing it, because it does become kind of an unknown. Now, there's been some discussion about, updating the Steam store page. And to be frank, sometimes we probably haven't done that as soon as we could. But we really are going to give the game the time that it needs. We don't want to rush this thing. And there are, I think, Veso, who's Frisian on the Discord channel, and I know this also posted on Steam, had a little paragraph that he posted kind of describing where the title is at right now. But I don't want that to deceive you, because these games are exceptionally complex. And there's a lot of things that go into making sure that all the different pieces are working well together and the scale is working well together. And we don't want to rush that. And if we were to even, everyone's like, when is it going to release? Is it this year? Is it this next year? Is it this summer? I mean, it's not, and I don't know, because the project's like in some kind of critical trouble and we're like worried about it. And it's definitely not. I mean, you can see these guys and they've been working really hard on their milestones. The team is working aggressively on the game. It's being in development and changing all the time. We want to give it the time that it needs to really mature. So I know that is not going to satisfy some people, no matter what I say, until I give you a release date, and even then, until it comes out, that's just going to be what you want. And I get it. Like I'm a fan of games. I understand. I've waited long periods of times for games that I was interested in, and I know that can be challenging. We really wanted to announce this early enough so we could have conversations with you about these features as part of the Dev Diary cycle. I know it may not seem like it sometimes because you don't necessarily see the. Maybe we need to do a better job of surfacing the impact, but your feedback and the things that you guys respond to during these diaries, they make a big difference. Not a small difference, a big difference. We really do listen to them. We are paying attention. Sometimes the lack of reaction is informative to us because if we do something that everyone just kind of likes, then people are like, okay, that's cool. And then we're like, all right, great, this is fine. Sometimes we announce something or talk about a dev diary, and there's a lot of conversation on the topic. And we're like, okay, wow, people are talking about this. This is super interesting to the community. We should pay attention to that. So I know that still may be frustrating for some people, and I respect that completely. But I hope that you understand and can respect that we really just want Knights of Honor 2 to be the best damn game it can be. I mean, literally, that's all we want. And we're we're not going to rush it. We're going to give it its time. We haven't rushed it up until now. We've been giving it its time throughout this development cycle. And this is a conversation between the publisher and developer. It's not no one's dictating to anybody. It's a dynamic live conversation that we have on a very regular basis. And we're going to continue to have that. And we're going to continue to, narrow down on when this thing is ready. And when it's ready, we will definitely tell you, and we'll be all excited about it. And you'll see marketing ramp up, and you'll see videos and a whole bunch of other stuff happening. Until then, we're just gonna let it take its time that it needs to mature. So I hope that again, if someone wants to clip this and put this on the Steam forums, be my guest. I mean, that's up to you. I hope that at least provides some insight into how we're thinking about this. And I know that all of you want a great game, and that's what we're really, really trying to give you. Obviously, we won't know what you think about it until we release it, but rushing it or doing something that doesn't give us that best chance just seems like, I mean, we only can make so many games in our lives, right? Each of us have our careers. We want to make the best version of our game that we can. So all of us want this to be good. And Georgie's beard wants this to be good. So, I mean, that's just part of the equation. I hope that helps a little bit. I'm also definitely willing here to take questions. We're not dodging the release date question. It's just difficult to know what answer we can give that will make the people that are just want it tomorrow happy. To be honest, I don't think you'd want it tomorrow right now. We still have work to do. We're not done yet. So anyways, I wanted to get that out there before we go on. Again, feel free to ask questions in chat, and we'll take them as we get to the end. So Georgie, thanks you for your patience. I just wanted to capture that and give a few. I don't know if we'll go into the royal court stuff, but I wanted to get that topic out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
Sorry?
Well said. I was saying just yeah.
And by the way, I mean, you guys are killing it. You work really hard, and the team is doing a great job of all the time. So I actually a lot of people are sitting there saying they think it's buggy. I got a comment from the QA saying that the Knights of Honor builds are some of the least buggy builds we've seen from any of our products. You guys make solid stuff. This is not about. I mean, obviously, bug fixing is important, but this is about making the quality of the game good, the features, the balance, how they interact, how things ramp. It's when a game takes 20 hours, 30 hours for one playthrough, even that may be so short. It takes a while to figure out where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. And as more complex the game becomes, it's so many systems intertwined into themselves. It's a lot going on in the game.
Yeah, they're hard games to make. So let's go back into the royal court discussion. So the first one is we were talking about the default action when a king dies. It really is just the eldest prince. That's the heir automatically once you have an eldest prince, and that's who inherits the kingdom. So that's a very we think we talked before about the death of a king, and there are some like small implications of like a little bit of like unrest, but it's really just sadness that the king died. But it's a relatively minor thing when your king not minor. I'm not making it sound like it's nothing, but it's not like tragedy when the king dies and an heir takes the throne. That's a normal cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. The king dying is one of the most impactful events in the game because it triggers so many different effects and events. But having an heir and being able to choose which prince you want as an heir is a really important part as well, because
Mm,
there's succession, not only in terms of your kingdom liking you and the nobility not being angry and stuff like that, but also what's the class of the new king and what can he continue to do that he can take over from the past king. So, for example, you might want to have a playthrough that you rely on a spy king, and if you don't have an heir that's a spy, then things might get tricky, or you might want to have a lot of gold income from your merchant and just continue going with that. So keeping active succession in check is perhaps the most important aspect of keeping the stability of your kingdom on par.
yeah, I know that like the default. Oh, Yavor, I'll ask that. I'll answer that question near the end. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the music there. So, I mean, the default of having that eldest prince is kind of a normal thing, but I find it really interesting that what you're talking about, because if you have a class, and this is something that I often personally do, right? Say my king is a merchant, but my
Yeah.
first heir is not a merchant. Um, I may have an heir that's a merchant that's like the second or third, and now I'm weighing something. It's like, do I really want to lose my king merchant because of all the benefits? Maybe I'm really trying to have my gold economy pumping right now. I may take the hit and the potential political problems down the road of having a different heir than the eldest. That's a decision that you can make. Now there are different implications if you make that decision.
Yeah. For one, it costs some resources to change an heir. You need to
Yeah,
spend books and gold, stuff like that. But you also lose crown authority, and the nobility kind of hates you for that. If you decide to change an heir that's already been appointed as a successor to the crown, but in a lot of cases that makes sense. And also, there's the case that um, you can't change. You can't appoint a prince to be an heir if he is too young. Currently in the game, if he is a newborn or just a small child, you can't really change him. So you need to weigh in
right.
that as well. You kind of have to time things properly. Marry your king to a princess from another kingdom, for example, or just wait for the auto marriage to happen early on, so you can have time to have kids that are old enough, and of course have princes that are born, because they can be princesses as well. So you can have time to appoint the right classes and kind of be ready for any spots, because as the game progresses, you might change your tactics. You might not need a merchant king. You might really
Right.
fancy a prince that has, let's say, high amounts of espionage attributes to him. And that means that he has higher espionage defense, and you can defend against other spies. So, for example, let's say me and Alex are playing and he's crushing me with his spy. I might want to appoint the prince that has a lot of spy stars in him, so I can defend against him.
Now this is interesting too, because when a prince becomes a king and all their brothers become important relatives, and we were talking about this with Alex a minute ago, those important relatives' abilities are not just irrelevant; they also have kind of an impact to your kingdom, right? Your royal family's collection, they're not as much as like the king and the queen, but they do still have a role there.
Yeah, absolutely. In the long run, you can plan on having certain classes and benefiting from the skills. Earlier on, I just mentioned with the martial that you gain morale bonus morale for your armies, but you can also gain stuff like book income throughout your kingdom if you have clerics who are important relatives. Having diplomats as important relatives grants you influence. So if you're lucky to have 3 or 4 princes, you can really be impactful in diplomacy.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that
Spice
kind of
give
also
Yes, yes.
kind of goes back to that whole point of like having a larger royal family, which was true back in that day. It's like the larger family you had, the benefit to the kingdoms were real because they would
Mhm.
be a part of the government economics and their skills, for better or worse, sometimes could impact things. So a little bit of that fantasy is translated into what we're providing here.
Yes,
Now
yes.
let's move on to the. We only have about 25 minutes left, and I want to leave some time for a few questions
Go.
from the forums here. There's also the scenario where if the king dies and does not have an heir, then a whole bunch of random stuff happens. Now we talked before about what happens if there's no heir and the king has siblings or other important relatives, and that's a tension moment, but then still the dynasty continues. So that's still a relatively smooth transition. There's not like anything catastrophic that's.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Go on. I was just gonna say that, yeah, the case you described, if you don't have any important relatives and you don't have any princes as heirs, it could happen quite often if you get risky, for example, with your martial kings and just get them killed in battlefield,
Right.
or enemy spies kill your kings for some reason, stuff like that. But you can also just be unlucky and don't really have any prince heirs. So once that happens, the whole kingdom, for once the crown authority drops heavily, it's -3 currently, I think. Also, the nobility's opinion really drastically
So
goes
hold on, I want to
down.
make sure we clarify because I think you jumped into my next question.
All right, sorry.
So now we're in the situation where the king has died and there's nobody in the royal family. So there's no
Yeah.
heirs, there's no important relatives. It's basically the line is stopped, and now chaos ensues of different types. So let's go through. There's a couple like baseline things that happen no matter what, and you were walking through them. Things like crown authority dropping. What else kind of happens? Before we
Yeah,
go into the
so
different scenarios, what are the baseline things that happen?
okay. So the baseline is, yeah, when you don't have an heir, then the crown authority drops and ability drops opinion. Of course, you also gain some temporary stability decrease throughout your kingdom that goes away after some time. Currently, we
Yeah, but if you're in
also
a situation where you're like your stability is already kind of rough, that can be the thing that teeters you over into rebellions across your kingdom, right?
it
So
could
there's
be, yeah.
a dangerous moment.
Definitely. It actually currently it just literally like works throughout all the towns you have, and if you have a rebellious population and the king dies, then it kind of works if there's an opportunity to spawn a rebel somewhere. So we kind of force that element when the event happens.
Mm-hmm.
And also the biggest thing, which I guess we can talk about later in more detail, is the kingdom split, which can happen if your king dies and there's no
See, you
heir.
keep on jumping ahead of me.
Yeah.
Georgie likes to jump ahead. You have the script ahead of time, buddy.
I
No, it's
know, I
fine.
know.
So let's go into the first before we go into that part because you're already kind of letting the cat out of the bag there for those that haven't read the Dev Diary.
Yeah.
The part that's first is like so you can have a progression of who gets the kingdom next, and part of that is picking a new king. Now I guess there's a few different choices that could come from, right? And then this happened in Knights of Honor 1 too as well, if I remember correctly, where like but one of the other people in your royal court could become the king.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you don't have an heir and you have important relatives, one of those important relatives will succeed the crown. But if you don't have an important relative, then someone from the royal court will take over that role. And if you, for some reason, don't have anyone in the royal court at all, then a random character with a random quest will be assigned as the successor to the king, which is the final
Okay.
step.
So I want to clarify that. Is it always someone from the royal court, or can it also sometimes be a random person, even if your royal court is populated? Like, is it always the royal court that gets the next tip?
If you don't have any important relatives and you don't have any prince heirs, it's always someone from the royal court if you have an
Okay. That was a little bit confusing in the dev diary. I get you now because the way in the dev
Yeah.
diary, I thought that it had changed to be it could be either the royal court or a random new person, and you just were dice rolling on which one you got. Okay, so it defaults to the royal court next, and kind of in an order of sequence. Okay.
Yeah, you kind of have
So
some control,
one of
but
your
it's
royal court
random.
knights will be elevated.
Yeah.
Okay. And in some situations, even though you've had all this chaos, that's the end of it, right? You have a new king, new member of the royal court. The royal court slot is now the king slot, and you can go get married and start the whole dynasty over again with a different dynasty. And that's just the way it goes. You have to recover from the chaos of having your dynasty end, but relatively straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you always want to have an heir, but if it happens that you don't have one, as long as your kingdom is in a good enough state before that, it would not be a really drastic thing. So if you have high crown
Still
authority, if you have
sucks.
stable
It's not
stability,
fun.
yeah,
It's not fun,
definitely.
but it's not the scenario we're about to talk about, which is like the worst of the worst scenarios, which is there is always a possibility of, especially, and I think this possibility increases the larger the kingdom is.
Yep.
But there is a possibility that civil war breaks out. And all of a sudden now you got a whole bunch of different splinter kingdoms that are all fractions of the original kingdom, and they all have their own leaders, and now you have to figure out what you're going to do about that. That sounds this is not I don't remember this being in Knights of Honor 1. I think this is a very brand new thing, and it's one of my favorite features in the game. I love this because and I think we've talked about this in passing a little bit over the years, but I think it's one of those things that just adds a level of dynamicism to the world map, where because it's not just happening to you, it's also happening to other kingdoms. The AI is going through this other cycle, so there could be a moment where you have no heir and your neighbor splits into two, and one part of it is your friend and one part isn't, and you have to navigate that. Like, it adds this dynamicness to the world that I just love.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really impactful event that doesn't happen. Like, you need to be really a big kingdom for it to work, because currently, if you have any governed provinces, they cannot split. So if you've appointed all your court members, let's say you have,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
yeah, so you have a safety net of the provinces you have all your characters in. If you're a small kingdom, it doesn't really impact you. There is also a minimum of about 7 provinces. I think currently below that, if your kingdom is smaller than that, you can't really have a split. So it kind of
Yeah.
works more for bigger kingdoms that have more territories. And for each province, we basically roll a dice depending on different factors in the kingdom. How much crown authority you have, what stability you have, how many wars are going on. All those things increase the chances of a province splitting. But also, some things grant you less chance for that to happen. For example, you might be a caliphate, you might be an independent Orthodox kingdom. Those states of your kingdom make you less likely to have a kingdom split. So
Yeah.
it's a balancing point between those two. But if when it does happen, if you're a big kingdom, then chaos ensues, basically, as you said.
Yeah, I think I find it interesting because I didn't realize the governorships were immune to the split potential.
Hmm.
So that's pretty cool. And it really does allow you to kind of establish that core wherever it may be. You may have like certain territories further off and that you want to have that you make sure it doesn't split off because it's an important war front or whatever, right? There's some decisions that you make about governorship even that are multi-layered. And that's part of what I love about how some of these systems work is they do kind of tie together in different ways. And it's not none of it's super overly complex, but it does influence. Like, all right, if I'm gonna be a governor, it's not just about, especially as my kingdom is growing and I'm taking over more land. It's not just about the places I want to get resource boosts from or that I want to take advantage of. It also is like, all right, if I get into a bad scenario, these are the places that are safe and protected, and maybe where I can rebuild from. Do I want to concentrate that into a core? Do I want to have a core plus like a couple other provinces that I know are on a front that are important to me because of certain like logistics, like maybe access to the ocean or whatever it may be. Like there's different kind of elements there that you have to think through. So I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a really cool thing.
And on the aggressive side, you can also be the one that forces a kingdom split. If you see a kingdom that's large and they don't have an heir, and they don't have
Oh
any
yeah, good point.
relatives, yeah, you can just put your spy there and make a hunting accident if you have archery, or just straight up kill him if you have assassination. And all of a sudden, you've just turned the tides for that kingdom with one click.
Yeah, and it ties again to the whole thing where like having an heir, and not just that, but having a married heir, even like making sure you increase your chances of getting as many children in the royal family as you can to kind of avoid that helps you keep control of your own fate. Versus
Yep.
once you get into that situation, if you decide to forget about it or just let the dice roll and see if you was like the old like love marriage versus arranged marriage. It's like you can wait for a love marriage, like wait for your prince to fall in love, but man, what if he doesn't? Like, what if no one likes him? What if he can't find somebody? Then
Yeah, yeah.
you may be in trouble because you don't have, your dynasty. It's an interesting kind of fantasy you can play out there.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I like to play with a lot of marriages and kingdom inheritances. So if I have princesses in foreign kingdoms, I can just get provinces from other kingdoms by claiming lands, which is a safer approach. And you remain a smaller kingdom, and you kind of take it slowly, but you don't run the risk of imploding from the inside, basically.
Yeah, awesome. So let's bring Alex back out here, and we will go through some questions. By the way, Teak, I saw you asked about the release date. It's funny. I waited until the halfway mark so that I could do that all in one shot and hope that would, cover most people, but still people jump in after the fact. So I did talk about that when you see the VOD. I did talk about it for about 5 minutes or so at around the 30-minute mark. So I don't have time to repeat all of it again, but definitely have that in there. So let's go through a few of the questions from the community site. Alex, welcome back.
Yeah, okay.
So if you remember, the site is community.knightsofhonor.com. We always take the questions from there. So Ivory Knight, I think Ivory Knight's around. He may be, maybe not. So he has a question that I think is one that's definitely worth answering, which is you mentioned that all the brothers of a prince king are important relatives and can succeed the throne. What about princesses? Do they act as potential inheritors of the throne as well?
Right now, they do not, because if the princes are married in another kingdom, well, some inheritance can be done through them, but it's for lands of the other kingdom. But right now they can never become the actual rulers of the kingdom, and their offsprings are actually considered to be in the kingdom they are married in, and not in your kingdom, so they cannot.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I think that there's another question here that he asked we already answered, which is, can you clarify the inheritance ever going up parent lineage, like cousins and whatnot? So right now it's just the brothers of the king.
Yeah, we cannot say what will be the state in the final version, because
Yeah.
very recently Dunkles could succeed the crown, and even cousins and so on, but right now they can't.
Yep. Zerg asks, this is a fun one. How many children can a king have? Do we have a max number?
Yeah, we do have four children is the maximum.
Oh, really? Okay.
These are actually four children that are alive simultaneously. So if some of them dies, they can have additional ones. But yeah, you can have four children, and some bonus information on that. The chances for a male child is 52%. This is a statistic. That's from real life, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Another question that Zuri asked that I was just curious about this too, and I think the answer is not right now, but are there mechanics to increase a prince's abilities? So I think they're talking about those ability points. So like maybe universities in the realm increase the chance for the prince to learn something event. Sorry, the way he worded this. Maybe every university in the realm increases the chance for the prince learn something event or something like that. Also, are there mechanics or events that could decrease the abilities? So it's really talking about those like stars and the different things that they can have, like warfare or whatnot. Are there ways to increase or decrease them? I think are they just static?
Gogo, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. You can do it in that way, but you can, for example, you be careful for what wife, for example, your king has, or if you marry a princess to a prince, and that prince succeeds the crown, then the stars of the princess get added to the attributes of the prince. So in that way, you can kind of increase your attributes, but you can't really make them through buildings and manual choices and stuff like that.
Yeah, we
So
didn't
right now,
want this to be something easy to increase. It must be an important choice and very hard to make. And once you make it, you cannot just compensate with some building or some training or something like this. We intentionally want them to be something static.
okay. All right, sounds good. Let's see here. So BC Knight asked, by the way, good to see you again. He was commenting he hadn't been around for a little while, and that's absolutely fine. Is the monarch the only type of government in Knights of Honor 2? And if not, how does that affect the royal court?
Yeah, it's the only one. And if we're about to change this, we need additional year. So right now we have considered, especially for some empires, for the Holy Roman Empire, we have talked about some other forms of government, but it's very complex, and right now we don't want to expand so much in that direction.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I was just having to respond real quick. Yeah, I mean it's a scalar thing, so definitely understand if the I remember talking about that a long time ago, and right now we focused in on just the monarchy style, and that makes sense. That was not original Knights of Honor had the same kind of setup. So I think we have two more questions from there, and I want to take Yavor's question about the audio thing as well. So let's see. Calliope asks. Yeah, so I think this is very similar to what we were answering before, but I'll ask the question just so Calliope gets the moment up there. So may I ask this, how much do relatives matter? I mean, for instance, two brothers or an uncle and his nephew are historically ruling two different entities with a separate administration. Wait, so I don't understand this question. For instance, two brothers or an uncle and his nephew are historically ruling two different kingdoms. Oh, okay, I get it. In this kind of case, would they still be considered relatives, though not being in the same court? So I'm guessing he's talking about like if a kingdom splits and they have, or if two brothers are now ruling two different kingdoms, what kind of implications does that matter? Like, like if someone, okay, I think I understand the question. Like, if I have a kingdom split, and the two people that are owning those two kingdoms are related somehow, and that kingdom then also dies without an heir, does that still kind of have some kind of historical connection, or is that pretty much wiped away?
At this point, there are several ways in the game. I'm not going to get in details that this can happen. Then the one of the princes is no longer part of your kingdom. He, for example, forms another kingdom, and from that point on, he's not considered part of the royal family. He's excluded from the royal family. If a prince rebels, he's still considered part of the royal family, and he can be recaptured, and you can forgive him and even invite him back in the royal court. Even make him heir to the throne once again. But if he forms another kingdom or joins another kingdom, then no longer he's lost to your royal family.
Okay, makes sense. All right, and the last one, I saw Chapo here earlier. Chapo from Niners Gaming. Yep, still here. Could you explain during the stream what we see in the last screenshot with the angry Thessalonians? What is the relationship behind this that makes them so angry about our marriage? So I think they're talking about that one image that we include in the dev diary. I saw some people guessing later on. So do you have any input on that you want to throw in there?
Georgie made this one, so he can probably share some of his knowledge.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I guess those reactions from the kingdoms are just every time you make some important diplomatic decision, declare war on someone, sign peace, sign marriage, sign trade, whatever. You just have we've basically like added some liveliness to the world by adding these messages from other kingdoms, and you receive reactions from them, how they react to your decisions, and those kind of cascade throughout neighbors and stuff like that. So you can see how your decisions affect the map if you click on the relationship view, for example, on the political map. And you can, after you click something that's impactful like that, you can immediately see what everyone thinks about that, which is kind of cool.
So why? I mean, but I guess the question was why was the relationship on that situation? Like, why was he unhappy with that?
Why was specifically that kingdom?
Yeah, I think Niners was trying to understand like what could cause someone to be unhappy.
I don't think I understand the question.
It's
Exactly.
okay. I'll take it. It's probably about million things in the game that can make two kingdoms not like each other. It can be some initial differences they have, or some history. Probably they were in war together or something. But it seems that one of the kingdoms does not like the other, and when you marry one of those kingdoms, the other one comes and tell you, what are you doing? These are treacherous people. Do not become, do not engage in royal bonds and marriages with them, and so on. So they are just these are just flavorful comments, but they show you how one of the kingdoms feels about the other one.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
those
I think we
types of
talked about this before, where like some kingdoms actually do have a memory of what's happened with them by other kingdoms. So if you have like two long-term rivals, kind of think like Romeo and Juliet kind of thing situation, and you marry someone, the other person's rival is gonna not be happy with that. So there's some of that kind of the whole world has some historical context to it with what's happening between the different kingdoms, not just what's happening with you. And when you decide to engage in diplomacy, whether it be even things like a simple thing as a wedding, but diplomatic pacts or trade agreements or whatnot. Like sometimes you can trade with someone and their enemy may message you and be like, "Hey, like don't trade with my enemy." Like, and you don't even necessarily maybe you didn't even know that was going on because you're just trying to find a trade partner and you didn't check the political map to find everyone that hates this guy right now because you're just trying to find someone to help you. So there's different. I mean, the world is alive. There's things that are going on that you have to respond to and deal with. And the image that Georgie posted, someone was not happy about that kingdom and is also not happy that you decided to marry them because now you're kind of tied to them. So that's where the reactions come from.
Yeah, and those texts kind of pop up sometimes as well. If you, during audience, if you ask something from someone, they might throw in those histories and those current states of the game where they mentioned that we would never trade with you because you fight our friends, stuff like that. So they keep track of those in the comments throughout diplomacy as well.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
important stuff, by the way. It's very interesting. The trademark strategy of Vesu is that if he has a very tough enemy that fights him, what he if he cannot win the war, he finds someone that his enemy doesn't like and declares war to that kingdom, and tries to get closer to
Yeah.
his initial enemy by doing so. Yeah, it's good strategy.
He declares war on the enemies of his enemy
Yeah,
to try to
exactly.
make his enemy like him
Yep.
more.
Yeah, and to sign peace eventually.
Ah, it's not a bad idea. It's like you can keep fighting me, but I'm fighting all the guys that you don't like. So come on, like, can we just like
Yeah,
if we make good, then I'll help you out. Like, let's do this. It's almost like
yeah,
a hidden defensive pact, right? Or offensive pact.
kind of. Yeah, it has second part that you have common enemies with your initial enemy, so this is additional advantage.
Yep. Let me ask a couple questions from the stream. So, Austrino, we don't have any plans to have a demo for Next Fest. So, yeah, it's not really on our scope right now. I also want to get the voice question about the music. So, yeah, maybe we should have another music stream soon. Yeah, Robin and Yannick are doing great. So they're still plugging away. We've been doing quite a bit of music recording lately. So we've done a lot of soloist recordings. We've done a little bit of full orchestra recording, and we're getting ready to do some more soon. So that is progressing quite well.
By the way,
And
some feedback,
still,
Brett.
sorry?
We initially liked very much what they did, but the new tracks, everybody loved them. So yeah, great work.
Yeah, every time
Yeah,
something new pops up, we're like, "Oh, this is so great! Hell yeah!"
yeah. There's a number of tracks that we're still slowly swapping out the digital versions for the live recorded versions, especially with some of the soloists. And the soloists are really cool because some of them are very talented. So we have the music that we wrote, and we also let them kind of improv around some of the musical ideas. So we got like bonus material basically, and some of it's really really cool, very pretty, very fun as kind of like that. If you remember back from their dev diary a while ago, it was we call it like session music, right? Like just stuff that's in the background that you kind of or study music. So really really cool stuff. They're heavy at work recording and writing some of the final tracks right now, just on the writing side, and then we're looking to soon hopefully book the orchestra time and get that done. So yeah, I can't say Kamos RZ which orchestra we're going to use quite yet because there are a few that we're talking with. Mainly, it's kind of a balancing act between some COVID protocols that are still running around and cost and booking availability. So it's tricky, right? Like it's always tricky to figure out which one you end up going with. We have a few that we want to use, and we'll see how that comes together with their schedule and everything. So yep, I think that kind of wraps it up. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. We'll be back again in about a month or so with another dev diary and more content. I think we said we were talking about goods next time. I know that's a topic about not just goods, but also some of the systems that connect to goods. So that could be really cool. And
that one is ready, and it's very important. So we should really talk about it.
It'd be a good diary. I'm sorry.
Oh, what?
I'm saying it's going to be a good diary. Sorry, excuse my friends.
Google and his
We're
pants.
gonna end on that note. We're gonna end on the note about
Yes.
the goods diary being a good diary. Like that's what we're gonna do. Well, thank you, Georgie. I don't even know how to walk it off after that. Like I guess that's just a mic drop, but I almost like a whoopee cushion where it's just like all right. Thank you so much, everyone. On that note, and Georgie will be back next time with a tight 10. He'll have his stand-up routine ready to go. Until then, take care of yourself. We'll see you on the next stream. Thank you so much for joining us.
See you.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Bye bye.